Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the 220 1002 Core 2 A Plus study group. It's the pre-show, so we got about 10 minutes before we get started. I'm untangling my headphones as we speak, my in-ear monitors, IEMs, because apparently I didn't do a very good job at keeping them straight after the last live show. So we're getting there. There we go. Hope everyone's doing well. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. We've got all questions today from the 220 1002 exam. We will be getting to those starting in just about 9 minutes. Hope everybody's doing well. Hopefully I chose the right study group this time. Let's see if I did. That would be, yes, I did. Okay, got it. Got it. Now I can hear myself, which is better. Been fighting that weird audio issue from last time. I think I've narrowed down what it is, and I've got a temporary fix in place. So we're going to see if my temporary fix works. If not, well, I don't know what. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But I have a much bigger, broader fix in the works. But fortunately, it's just a bad cable. So bad cable or bad connection. So those are easy fixes, right? Samil in the chat room passed your 1001 last week, taking 1002 in December. That's probably a pretty good time frame between, because those are big exams. And I always tell people, make sure you study for one exam at a time. You don't want to study for more than one. Now I can't, I need my keyboard fixed. I need my keyboard to properly respond to function keys. I have to turn it off there so that it will do that. There we go. Turn that down a bit. Make this a little less bright. This is great. We're doing it. So we are recording down here. I've already recorded the pre-show or the intro to the podcast. We've got recordings going. Well, the streaming is up there. That looks fine. Watching to see how the audio turns out there. So we'll figure these out. One of the things that we will do today in the first hour is I'll ask you questions and you can answer them online. So I will, of course, open up the chat room for questions in the second hour. We can do that. Hello, St. Vincent. Always nice for you to check in. The things that are on this exam are very operating system and security focused, along with some troubleshooting. So a lot of the questions today will be around that. Let me check a few other things. Make sure we've got everything ready to go. Put this over here. Hello, downtown, Houston, Texas. Downtown. Houston's a big place, so it's useful to qualify where you are. Hello, Los Angeles, Philippines checking in. Hey, good to have you here. This is always a good stream because I think a lot of people want more troubleshooting or more 1002. It's not quite the same rote memorization as the 1001, so this will be nice. Get to do that. There's Florida checking in. My fellow Floridians, hello in Tampa. Welcome. Good to have you. It's got to be nice down there right now. Here in the northern part of the state, it is, well, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, high of 70 today. It's actually kind of nice. Had the door to the studio open earlier. Can't do that for the live streams. Too much noise. Hello, Miami. Good to have you. Differences between the 1001 and 1002. Well, they're completely different. Everything that's on the 1001 is not covered in the 1002. So there's enormous differences. I'll give a brief overview at the beginning of this, but pretty much both of the exams are so dramatically different. They are two different exams that really don't have a lot of overlap. So the differences are 100%. They're 99.9% different. How's that? 5-minute warning. All right. Excellent. Hello, Miami. Hello, England. It's two very different places. This is one where South Florida's checking in today. South Florida is here. I was thinking a lot about South Florida this week. I was watching some Phil Hendry. When I lived in Miami, when I lived in Fort Lauderdale, technically, I guess I lived in Miami Lakes, lived in Pembroke Pines, and lived in Miramar. So when I lived down there, listened to a lot. I was field service at the beginning. My first field service, really my first big IT job outside the scope of computer operations, was a field service position. And I would go from South Miami and I would go visit customers and take care of field service things. So I listened to a lot of radio because we didn't have satellite radio at that time. It didn't exist. So I listened to WIOD, which was at the time amazing talk radio, really not really talk radio the way most people think about it. A very unusual style of radio. Kind of missed those days. But I was listening to some Phil Hendry. It took me back to Miami. Hey, Canada. I'll let Mrs. Professor Messer know you were here. She's our in-house Canadian. So we always like to know when Canada's checking in. Where in Canada, I guess, is the other question. Hello, Jacksonville, more Florida. Hey, Philly. Is it cold in Philly? What's going on in Philly right now? Hello, Nigeria and Denver. Good to have you here. H. Monroy in the chat room. Want to send a thank you for all your work. Recently purchased your test exams. Thank you very much. Your support is very much appreciated. Plan on getting the vouchers through my website. Again, very much appreciated. Hopefully that's a win-win for most people, because when you purchase a voucher, it does help the site, but you also get a discounted voucher. So it's a nice combo between those two. Hello, Maryland, my Maryland. Louisiana's here, checking in. There's Columbia in Maryland, the Maryland version of Columbia. Illinois is here. A lot of great folks. Bought your course notes for the exams. Great content. Thank you, Arturo, in Miami. I appreciate that. Used to work in Miami down near the airport. I worked off Golden Glades Interchange. I did field service work down there. I traveled a lot in my car because I would cover everything. I would cover Dade, Broward, and at the time, Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach. A lot going on there. Thanks for your support, Arturo. Appreciate that. Hello, San Diego and Arkansas and Spokane, Washington. Is it Washington out there or is it Washington out there? Is it Washington on the East Coast or the West Coast? I don't know. Hello, Georgia. Just up the street from me. Are there plans for Network Plus 008 exams? There are plans. I always have plans. There's lots of plans. There's best laid plans. That's the idea anyway, is to have them available. I got to finish the videos first. We're almost done with the videos, though. I put 5 more out today. So the Network Plus, next step on Network Plus will be to write some exam books or exam book with 3 exams in it. Same plan. Same thing as the others, except for Network Plus. We got a minute to go. 1 minute to go until we get started. See if I can remember how to do this. It looks like I'm watching my audio. You can see this is my streaming box that's up here. I'm watching my audio because we did have a little bit of popping last time. And I believe I've located where the popping is coming from. And I believe I have temporarily resolved it, but I'm concerned it may come back. So if you hear it, I can't hear it because it's in the post part of this. It's not in the actual real-time audio. It's in the post audio. So if you hear it in the chat room, you can give me a heads up, but I will hear it. I will clearly see it when I do my editing of the video, of the audio. So there's plenty there to go through. Let's get some things started here. Let's get a keynote up and running. Let's look for a green light. I got it. That's really good to go. With that, it's the top of the hour, everybody. Let's do a study group. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 220-1002 Professor Messer Core 2 A+ study group. This is our study group we do each month where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA A+ exam, specifically the Core 2. And then you get to answer the questions online. If you're here live, you can answer the questions online. There is plenty to be able to go through today. And if you are here live, we would love to have you participate with us. You can, of course, answer these questions online by following these instructions. Simply pop open a new browser window and browse to this location, professormesser.com/QA. professormesser.com/QA. There's also an app you can get for this because why shouldn't you? Everybody has an app. It is the Socrative student app. That's the one you're looking for. The service is called Socrative. The app is the student version of the Socrative student app. There's a Socrative teacher app. That's for me. The Socrative student app is for you. If you do use the app, it will ask you for a room name. That room name is right there, Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Now, if you do all of that, and everything seems to work the way we would expect, then there will be a question waiting for you. And that question says, which of the following will launch Windows 10 safe mode during boot? Would it be restart from Task Manager, hold Shift while clicking Restart, press F1 while booting, update the BIOS boot order, or rename the Windows profile? This is a question from last month, so you may recognize it if you were here. This is our rewind question. Which of the following will launch Windows 10 safe mode during boot? Restart from Task Manager, hold Shift while clicking Restart, press F1 while booting, update the BIOS boot order, or rename the Windows profile. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and put your answers in there. And if you do that in the meantime, you can head on over there to put those answers in. We will come back to that question in just a moment. Thank you for being here. We do one of these study groups every month. We actually do mini study groups every month. We do a Core 1, a Core 2, a Network Plus, and a Security Plus study group every month. This is this month's Core 2 A+ study group, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you here. But of course, there are times when we're not here live and streaming. You can always see the videos and replays to all of our study groups on my YouTube channel. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. We've also got our daily A+ pop quiz question you can find on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. You can find it on LinkedIn at professormesser.com/LinkedIn. You can find a pretty picture version of it at professormesser.com/Instagram. So there's all kinds of things you can do to get to that point. We would love to have you connect with us however you enjoy your social media. So just type in professormesser.com/ and the name of the thing that you hope to find us on. Maybe it'll take you there. We will today be talking about questions and answers from the 220-1002 exam. This was an exam that was released in January of 2019. That means that the estimated retirement date for this exam, assuming that they would come out with a new set of exams, there should be a new version of exams here in the next year or so, we would expect the estimated retirement to be July of 2022. I suspect it's probably even going to be pushed a little bit further back from that, but we don't have an official date yet. But certainly, if you are here today in November, you are studying for this exam, then keep studying. You are studying the right one. Do not wait for a new set of exams. Do not wait until July of 2022 because you think it will be better or easier or something if a new version of an exam comes along. I would not recommend doing that. It takes quite a while for new study materials to make it to market. You could be waiting quite a long time. And in the meantime, everybody else is getting their certification and getting the jobs that you would have gotten had you went ahead and gotten the certification. So always, always make sure that you're able to at least do the right types of studying, and the 220-1001 and 220-1002 are the right ones. We also have exam requirements for the 220-1002, which means you have to score 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. So that Doesn't help us very much because we have no idea how much each question is worth. They're all worth a different number of points, but they all come from these topics: operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So everything we talk about today will come from those 4 categories, and we'll step through each one of those as we go. I'll also let you know that, of course, all of my training courses are all available for you to watch for free online. There's no registration. There's no paywall. There's no weird thing where you have to subscribe to something. I've seen some weird things out there. I don't do any weird things. It's just there. You can go out and watch it. Some of you would like an offline version of this, and the offline version is one that you can download and take with you. I have audio MP3 versions available. I have course notes. I have practice exams. I have so much. My course notes are available on my site at professormesser.com/1002notes, and they're designed to really give you an overview of everything that is in my course. They're not intended to replace the existing course that's there. You still need to read your book. You still need to watch the videos, but the course notes have all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts. They're all in here. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/1002notes. Also let you know, many people want some Q&A. Always good to have some additional Q&A. There's some free Q&A out there at professormesser.com/take10. I've got Q&A there for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. You'll be able to know exactly when that is going to be. We also have a replay of our podcast on our website. This audio version of this study group is in podcast form at professormesser.com/podcast. It's a very easy way to distribute the audio version of this. There's also a video version of this you can watch directly from my website or from the YouTube channel, professormesser.com/YouTube. If you do happen to go out there, you'll notice there are timestamps there. So this is put there by my marketing manager, Lori. She's watching. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She watches the chat as she's looking at these timestamps, and you can go back years to get these timestamps to know where questions, answers, and other things are happening in the live stream in the YouTube video description. Now, we can't be live all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but we can be online all the time, even though we're not in a live stream. So you can, of course, find us on our Discord server, professormesser.com/Discord. And you can also find the icon for that at the upper right of my website. There's a group of icons there for social media. It's one of those that's there. It's in the far right. professormesser.com/Discord will get you there. You can join and chat with us whenever you would like, even if we're not on a live stream. As some folks have already mentioned in the pre-show, you could, of course, go to Pearson Vue and purchase vouchers for your exam and pay full price. Many people do. I don't know why, because there are less expensive options out there. And many of these less expensive options require you to have some type of coupon code or to hunt around the internet for the discount code. Instead, you could just go to professormesser.com/vouchers, where the vouchers are already discounted. You don't need a code. You don't need a coupon. You don't need to Google anything. They're just automatically discounted. So you would immediately save money over a full price voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. But that's not good enough. I wanted to give you a little bit more. And if you do purchase a voucher from my site, you get my Exam Hacks ebook for free. This is a set of 14 life hacks that is designed to help you with the study process prior to your exam. It also will help you with the study process or the testing process during your exam. And of course, afterwards, if you do need some additional help, maybe you have to take the exams again, I give you a few other life hack tip tricks in there. You'll find it at professormesser.com/vouchers. It's all available. And I know it says we get these vouchers back to you in 24 hours. It's often even less than that. So this is one where you might be able to save a little bit of money. No effort required. professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's do that question we looked at before. The question asked, which of the following will launch Windows 10 safe mode during boot? Would it be to restart from the task manager, hold shift while clicking restart, press F1 while booting, updating the BIOS boot order, or renaming the Windows profile? Let's see how you did. Well, we're a little torn and almost an exact tie, for first place between holding Shift while clicking Restart and pressing F1 while booting. We have 6%, a two-way tie for second, between restarting from Task Manager and updating the BIOS boot order, and then nobody said to rename the Windows profile. Well, the press F1 while booting is kind of an odd one because F1 doesn't have anything to do with the Windows boot process. The function key you were probably thinking of was the F8 key. That is the one that brings up the listing of available options during a Windows startup. One of the problems, though, is that with Windows 8.1 and Windows 10, there is something called fast startup that is in those operating systems, which means they don't shut down all the way when you turn them off. They go into a hibernate mode, and when it restarts, it doesn't restart back at the beginning, which normally is where you would tell the operating system, don't start up normally, start up in safe mode. So with fast boot enabled or fast startup enabled, that won't help you. So one of the things that you can do if you're on the Windows desktop and you have access to the Windows desktop, you can hold down the Shift key when you're clicking that restart button, and when it restarts, it will realize, oh, you're holding the Shift key. You really do want to completely restart this system, and it will finally go all the way back so that you can hit those proper keys and get back into the safe mode, maybe even start with a startup media if that's what you want to do. But that will get you all the way back to the beginning so it doesn't have that problem. You could turn on the Restart Now function manually or choose the Restart Now function manually by going to Settings, Update and Security, Recovery, Advanced Startup, and Restart Now. That seems a bit involved, but there it is. That is an option. You could also go into the system configuration and tell it to restart under MS Config. You can also, many people don't realize this one, just as the system is starting, interrupt it 3 times. So as it's starting up, hold down the power key so it powers down. Then power it back on, hold down the power key, and interrupt the boot process. After you do this 3 times, the system realizes, wait, maybe you want to do something else. Let me present you with a series of options so that you can get into safe mode and do other things from a normal boot process. The one we were looking for, the only option that was in our list was this very first one, holding down the Shift key when clicking Restart. That is indeed the correct answer. If you answered B, 44% of you got that one right. As I mentioned, pressing F1 while booting doesn't help you. It has nothing to do with Windows starting up, especially if Windows is trying to get into their fast startup process. That's not going to help you at all. We also have those 6%. Restarting from Task Manager doesn't provide any safe mode functionality. Updating the BIOS boot order, well, it's not going all the way back to the BIOS to boot, so changing the BIOS boot order isn't going to help you very much to launch Windows safe mode during the boot process. We always want Windows to start booting so that we can press the F8 key and get into that safe mode. And renaming the Windows profile, you are correct, 0% of you. Nobody chose that one because that's not even close to being correct. That doesn't help you with safe mode. The option here, the one that I think maybe have surprised some folks, is option B, hold Shift while clicking Restart. That is the correct answer. Well done. I feel like we've already learned something in our studies today. So that's good. We've got at least something we can work with here. This is a series of tasks we go through in our study group to kind of get things started. So now we know that you are in and able to answer questions. But the very first question I have on a study group is or at least the first new question, is a performance-based question. Now, for those of you that haven't taken the A+ exam before, the first handful of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice like this one. It will not have a question with a number of options you can choose from. Instead, it might ask you questions in another way. It might be a drag and drop question. It might ask you to put things in a particular order. It might have you do some matching on the screen. There's a lot of different things they can do. They could also put you in a command prompt and have you provide some type of command, typing it in on the keyboard as if you were sitting in front of Windows. And in fact, I have one for you today that is a command prompt performance-based question. This performance-based question asks, from the command line, And I show you the command line there. That's the one. It's a Windows 10 command line. Determine the PID for winlogon.exe. From the command line, determine the PID for winlogon.exe. Now, if you think you know the answer, you need to put the answer in with that URL at the bottom of your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no questions or options or answers or anything in the chat room that might give us a hint. We don't want to do that. So go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in what you think the proper answer would be. From the command line, determine the PID for winlogon.exe. This would be a good one to do. Some of you are trying some very interesting and unique answers, which are not right. But some of you are spot on with what the answer would be. And we'll look at what some of these answers might be too. And some of you are telling me how to do it in the GUI, which is not what I asked either. We want to, from the command line, determine the PID for winlogon.exe. So that's, some of you are simply saying, I don't know. I'm stumped. I'm a little bit agog. I'm aghast. That's sort of how it goes as well. I get it. So this is one you do have to know, though. You could be prompted on your screen. In fact, sort of the next step of this might be that you're troubleshooting an application problem and you need to administratively stop that particular process. How would you do that? Well, the first thing you would need to know is the PID. We'll talk about what that is, the PID for the process. So we will go through and have to figure out what that PID happens to be. And notice that I gave you a very specific command prompt as well. So it has to be in that command prompt to be able to do it. Let's see if you can work through the details of this one. I like this question because you could get a number of different options on your exam that are at the command line. You might be asked to present something at the command line. It's certainly possible. So I'm going to, of course, try to bring up a command line on my side and be able to give you the perspective of what I think it might be too. So we'll have a look at that in just a moment. Now, the question is, if you can't come up with the answer on the exam, then you're going to get the answer wrong. That's kind of how it works. You have to know about what these commands do and how you would work through it. Let's do this ourselves. From the command line, determine the PID for winlogon.exe. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring over a VM that I've got. Here it is. Here's a VM that I'm running where I want to see all the PIDs. Now, PID is a process ID. That's what that stands for. Whenever we're working in Windows, we're starting our applications. We're starting Chrome. We're starting Notepad. We're starting Microsoft Word. And if we were to look at the task list, we would see them listed as names. We would see them listed as Microsoft Word, as Notepad, as all of these other things. You can see the names that are in there for all of them. But you've got the option to also reference these by their process ID. The process IDs that are in here can be viewed from the command line. Pretty simply, we can do a task list, which is going to list all of these different executables that are running, and look at all of them. Tons of executables running on the system. A lot that are there, and we would have to find the one that we were interested in. But notice that there is a PID column, the process ID, and you can see the process IDs for all of these. Now, if we were going through our troubleshooting question, this is one that I think would also be a good one to think about. Troubleshooting questions will, of course, have you take another step. So you may have to find the process ID, and then you may have to kill that particular process. But if I was to find on my computer, winlogon.exe has a process ID of 668. Now, this process ID on your computer is going to be completely different than 668. It will be very different. It would be unlikely that you would find that on my computer. So that's one where finding the right process ID could be very helpful. And in fact, I have that on my machine. I didn't put the same graphic here. If you'll bear with me a moment, I'm going to do some real-time editing to really be able to see this, because I did a little bit of a change with this. Oh, I didn't do this. Here it is. I'm going to get rid of a graphic that's on my page, because I'm going to show you kind of a shortcut to finding this, because you'll notice a lot of stuff was on the screen. There were a lot of things here. There, how many services are running on a single Windows system? Hundreds. There's a lot there. So one of the things you can do to make this a little bit easier is in your task list. Let's go back to the command prompt down here. You can run a task list, but you could also search for certain things. In Windows, you can use the find command, not fing, a find command. In that find command, you would put in quotations the thing you are looking for. I think we were looking for a win log on in ours. And there, instead of it putting all of those incredibly long groups of lists of processes on my screen, it finds exactly what I'm looking for on my screen. And in this case, win log on, and just shows the line that contains that particular text. So that's very fast if you're looking for a particular thing. That makes it very, very quick. So let's say you're looking for, you're doing a task list and you want to find everything that has the text in it, SVC. You know, there's a lot of those, but it narrows down what that happens to be. So at least you have some options that you can use to start breaking down where these particular types of services or names would be, and a quick way to do it. If you can't remember, though, just do a task list, and you can always just search through it manually. There's the whole list, and then you can scroll up and start scrolling through it to find the thing you're looking for. Oh, yeah, there's WinLogon 668. There it is. That's the process for choosing and determining the process ID for a particular executable or any of those executables. Plenty to choose from there, and that is the correct answer. Now, some of you, because this was a question that had kind of an open view of this, this is a lot of them that said, okay, there's things you should know about this. Some of you felt this was not an easy question. In fact, this was probably one of the easier command line questions you would ever get, because you can simply type in one word, task list. That's how you would do it. And then find, of course, the winlogon.exe PID, and you can put it in here. A number of you did find the PID. You gave me your PID. Some of you found the one on your computer, and so you must have done it right to be able to get there. So very useful to have that functionality, and of course, that is just one of the many command lines you need to know for the exam. You do not want to be in a situation where you are struggling with command lines. I think those are gimmies. Those questions, we know what the commands are. They give us a list of these commands on the CompTIA exam objectives. So you already know what they can ask of you. So make sure you go through those commands, you're familiar with them, and you step through them. It's going to be an important one to be able to do this, and there's quite a few commands you need to know. So pretty useful to be able to make that happen. Let's do another question. All right, let's shift gears from our performance-based questions, and let's do a multiple choice-based question. This question asks, a technician has replaced the batteries in a UPS. Which of the following would be the best source of disposal information? Would it be EULA, SDS, MDF, NDA, or BIOS? A technician has replaced the batteries in a UPS. Which of the following would be the best source of disposal information? Would it be EULA, SDS, MDF, NDA, or BIOS? Each one of those is a real thing. They're all real acronyms you need to know for your exam. So if you're going through this list and you're thinking, I don't know what that one is, or I don't know what that one is, make a note of it, because you will want to go back and be able to do that. I know some of you are mentioning in the chat room, you looked at the price for a replacement battery for your UPS. If you're getting the batteries directly from the manufacturer, they are kind of expensive. The batteries that are in my UPS, I have a big 850 the UPS that I use that's a sort of an always on linear UPS. It's one that I did have batteries. They get old after a while. I have to change them out every 2 to 3 years. But the batteries in there are just standard lithium-ion batteries you can get from the battery place in town. You know, every town seems to have a battery place. There's a where you go to get batteries for your car. They have other types of batteries. I just took the batteries in there, swapped them out, and put them in there. I didn't even purchase all of those. So that's certainly something we need to know. Is this a question in Core 2? It absolutely is. All of the questions we do today are coming directly from the Core 2 exam objectives. So it is indeed one of those that we would need to know. See if you know what it is. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Let's see what you know about UPS. This is one of those where your boss will say, hey, we need to swap out all the batteries and all the UPSs. It's that time of the cycle. We've gone 3 years. Let's swap all the batteries out. Great. Now, what do I do with all these old batteries? I have a room full of old batteries. What do I do? It's a good question. It's a valid question because you don't want to do the wrong thing. But how would you know what the right thing is? I think I've probably given you too much information. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, the technician has replaced the batteries in a UPS. Which of the following would be the best source of disposal information? Is it the EULA, SDS, MDF, NDA, or BIOS? We know that 59% of you have said SDS. We also know that 19% said EULA and 16% said MDF, almost a tie. I suspect some of you may have been guessing on that one. MDF just sounds good, doesn't it? But not the right answer. 3% said NDA, 3% said BIOS, and some folks in the chat room said, what is a UPS? We have a lot of things to really break out here, don't we? We have a lot of things to work on. So let's start at the beginning with this question and what we're doing with it. So let's begin first with what the correct answer might be, and then we will talk about where this comes from. If you're ever in a situation where you're trying to determine what you do with something that needs to be disposed of, and you aren't quite certain where you should go with this, you should find the material safety data sheet for that piece of equipment. There is a material safety data sheet. You'll see it referred to as the MSDS or simply the SDS. And it's a requirement in the United States and in other countries that a manufacturer that provides you with this hardware also has to provide you with a knowledge of what to do for disposal, for a spill, for first aid. That's what we're looking for. You'll sometimes see this abbreviated as a SDS, a safety data sheet. But one of the things that you always will find, whether it's MS or DS or SDS, it's effectively the same thing. So you've got those. MSDS isn't technically outdated. There's still people using this. Other parts of the world, they prefer to use the term SDS, but you will still see both of them used very commonly. One is not better or different than the other. They're all the same thing to be able to find those there. The answer, though, of course, is the SDS, is the safety data sheet. That is one that could help you if you're trying to figure out, now, what do we do with all these batteries? It will tell you what to do with all these batteries. So you've at least got that going for you. Now, the question is, what are these other things? We have all these other options here. A EULA is an end-user licensing agreement. That is a document provided with software that tells you how you are able to use the software and use the license properly. Doesn't really help you dispose of an uninterruptible power supply battery. That's not going to help you. An MDF, this is whenever you start getting into the network plus side, the IDF and MDF are going to be pretty important because that's where you're going to be putting things in a data center. That's the room where you put things in a floor of a building. And if you're ever in a situation where you want to be able to at least the work through where we are going to put switches, routers, and other devices. It will be in the main and intermediate distribution frames. So that has nothing to do with how we would dispose of UPS batteries, however. 3% of you said NDA. NDA is a contractual agreement. It's a non-disclosure agreement. That doesn't help you know where to put batteries or how to dispose of batteries. And you also have BIOS. The BIOS, the basic input-output system of your computer, doesn't help you replace batteries either. That's what starts your computer up. So that doesn't tell you what you have to do with this room full of batteries that's no longer good. Batteries especially, since they are considered to be hazardous materials, certainly what's inside of them are hazardous. We want to be sure we dispose of them properly, and the material safety data sheet will absolutely tell you the best way to dispose of them. Usually you would take them somewhere locally to a proper disposal facility who knows what to do with those. It would help if I read the abbreviations. You just missed it. You just missed the whole thing. You can always rewind back after we're done, though, and go back through where I go through each of those answers. But each one of them, to that point, they're all in your exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with all of those. So let's do another question. I've got another multiple choice-based question. This question asks, a system administrator needs to update the drivers in a Windows image file. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be NSLOOKUP, SFC, DISM, GP update, or robocopy? A system administrator needs to update the drivers in a Windows image file. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Is it NSLOOKUP, SFC, DISM, GP update, or robocopy? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Figure out what it might be. Whenever I start looking at some of these options, all of these options, by the way, are things that come directly from the exam objectives. So make sure that you are familiar with the exam objectives. In fact, it should be one of the first things you ever download is the CompTIA exam objectives. There's a great amount of information in there. Make sure you're familiar with it. All these answers that I put in here, I try to put answers that are all associated with topics from the exam objectives. That way you're at least familiar with what they are as we go through. So even if you get the question right, you might even learn something from the wrong answers. That's the idea as we go through this. Should be useful. The question here is about it's multiple steps or multiple things going on. There's drivers, there's a Windows image file, and then there's something we need to use to be able to work with that. So this may be one of those where it's the process of elimination. Maybe you know what everything is except for one, and you know what all of those things do, and they don't do the thing I'm describing. Maybe it's a leap of faith at that point. We just say the only one left is this one. I guess we'll choose that one, even if we don't know for sure what it happens to be. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, a system administrator needs to update the drivers in a Windows image file. Which of the following would be the best choice for this task? Would it be NSLOOKUP, SFC, DISM, GP update, or robocopy? 66% of you say you would use DISM. 24% of you would use GP update. 8% would say SFC would do it. And then a tie for last place at 2% apiece between NSLOOKUP and robocopy. Now, if you've ever worked with Windows image files, WIM files, then you're probably familiar with the process of managing those WIM files. And one of the best ways to do this, the command line, is use the Deployment Image Servicing and Management tool. That's DISM for those of you keeping track. It allows you to manage these image files. You can imagine putting everything into an image file is great because then you can deploy that image, you can restore the image on other systems. But once you create the image, how do you make changes to it? There needs to be a way to do that. You don't want to have to completely re-image a system, make the change, and then rebuild the image. That would take forever just to make a single change. So instead, you can use this DISM utility to update applications in the image, to update drivers in the image, to change configurations in the image. It's a very useful utility. It works with the command line, and it's very simple to help automate what you're doing with your Windows images. If you want more information on this, this comes from the 220.1002 section 1.4, the video Microsoft command line tools. If you're looking to get more information on the DISM and any of the command lines, they are in that particular video. There's plenty there to choose from. The deployment, image servicing, and management is the right answer. 65% of you got that one right. Answer C, that is the correct answer. Some of you said GP update is what you would use. It's got the word update in it, so it makes sense. Isn't that how you would update drivers? The way that you would update in the GP update is used for group policy. That's what the GP is, for the group policy update. So when you need to change the policies on a particular computer, you would use the GP update utility. GP update is not used to modify or update or manage a Windows image file. However, it's used to manage the workstations and other devices on your network. The SFC, the system file checker, very useful. If you're concerned about the core operating system files maybe being corrupted, you would like to check them, and if any of them do come back as being modified, you would like to correct those files, SFC will do that for you. But SFC does that on your local system, not in an image, at least not directly. So SFC is not what you would use to be able to update a driver in a Windows image file. That won't help you at all. NSLOOKUP is the name service lookup or name system lookup. If you ever want to find or query a DNS server, you would use the NSLOOKUP utility. And then robocopy does not stand for robot, although it should. It is the robust copy, because it is a really robust way to copy files, especially if you need to copy files, a very large set of files over maybe a link that is not the most stable. It will copy files, and if it's interrupted in the middle and you get the link back, it will pick up where it left off. So it is very robust, but it does not update drivers in a Windows image file. The only option here that does update drivers, the DISM utility. Answer C, 65% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Nicely done. Well, as you can see already, the questions on this exam come from many different types of topics. One of the things I found that was a problem for me is that there's not a lot of great resources on the internet to be able to test yourself to see if you're ready to take the exam. A lot of the questions on the internet are just wrong. They aren't written in a way that emulates the actual exam experience. It doesn't give you a proper understanding of what you can expect when you walk into the room. So I wrote my own set of questions that do exactly that. They are designed to have a similar style, a similar voice, a similar cadence to the actual exam, but it's all original questions that I have written. This is my Core 2 practice exams, 380 pages, 90 questions in 3 separate exams. It's a big book. You can see it's a super large book. To be able to get there, it's offered in both this physical form that you see here and a digital PDF. I'll show you the PDF in just a moment. If you purchase the physical form, then you get the PDF for free, which is kind of nice to have that. I have both performance-based questions and multiple choice-based questions in this. Let's step through one. Why don't we, since we're here? Let's do this A14. This is one of the questions from my 220.1002 book. Which of the following governmental policies manages the use of personal data? Is it PCI DSS, EULA, GDPR, or FOSS? Now, if you know the answer, this one's a relatively easier question than some of the more advanced ones in the book, but you can quickly go to an set of answers that will just tell you, oh, it's A, B, C, or D. But it's nice to also get more interesting or more detailed overview of what's there. I have a section called the details, and we're on page 7. You could manually flip to page 50, but I've got a link here. Just click it, and it will take you to page 50. And it tells us the answer is C, GDPR, and then I give you the explanation that explains why that correct answer is correct. Now, one of the things that that's really important when I take these exams is I get questions wrong. I want to know why the question was wrong. And a lot of the Q&A that I've seen doesn't provide you with any type of feedback. It's a great opportunity to learn from your mistakes. So for every incorrect answer in my book, I give you an explanation of why they were incorrect. So that gives you a little more information. So if you chose PCI DSS, I explained to you why it's not PCI DSS. If you chose FOSS, I explained to you why it's not FOSS. You'll notice that I also will write out all of the abbreviations in here as well so that you can get familiar with what those names happen to be. And then at the very bottom, I put a link to the video that describes the topics discussed in the question. So if you went through the question and you didn't even understand the question, you wanted more detail about the question, you can go right to this video, 220-1002. There's a QR code, or you can just click the link and it will take you right there. So these multiple steps, and I'm in a PDF reader, so I could annotate this screen, I could write on it, I can modify things, or I can just click the back button and go back to where I started, and now I can go to the next question that's in the list. So that is my practice exams PDF and physical book. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/core2pe. It's also a great way to support the site. And I think if you're planning to get a real good set of questions before you go into the exam, this is the set you should look at. Written by somebody who's, I wrote these as someone who wishes I had these before I walked into the exam. Find it at professormesser.com/core2pe or follow the links in the pull-down menus at the top of the Professor Messer website. Let's do another question. I've got a multiple choice question here. This one asks, a user is encrypting a small folder of files on their Windows SSD. Which of the following is being used for this security? Is it BitLocker, Active Directory, EFS, FAT32, or UEFI? A user is encrypting a small folder of files on their Windows SSD. Which of the following is being used for this security? Is it BitLocker, Active Directory, EFS, FAT32, or UEFI? If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's on your screen. Go directly to that link and lock in your answer. In the chat room, do I ship these books worldwide? For the physical books, I certainly do. Ship them anywhere in the world. There is international shipping costs, though, that are added to it. The costs for your particular shipments are provided during checkout, so you can see what that happens to be. It's for some reason it's very inexpensive to ship within a country, and then for some reason it's $1 million to ship to Canada. For some reason, I don't know why it's so expensive to do international shipping. That's just how they get you. But you've at least got the option. And I realize some people would like the physical book. So yes, I do ship worldwide. There is that option. You can always take advantage of that. Some people prefer the digital book. So it's cover the bases. Do I have books like that for Security Plus and Network Plus? I do have one I have a practice exams book for Security Plus. And shortly we'll be working on a practice exam book for Network Plus. That's the plan anyway. As I said earlier, that's the plan. We'll see if the plan works out. That's the real question, isn't it? Is the plan going to work out? We'll find out. That's the important part. I think it will. I think we'll be able to get that Network Plus practice exam book done over the next few months. Has to be written. I like to write all of the questions from scratch to be able to do that. Do I need to learn all the acronyms on this CompTIA website for the 1002? Well, in the exam objectives, it would be good to know what the acronyms do. Not necessarily what the abbreviations mean, but what that particular thing is and how you would use it. So pretty important to have that. Let's have a look at this question. This question asked, a user is encrypting a small folder of files on their Windows SSD. Which of the following is being used for this security? Is it BitLocker, Active Directory, EFS, FAT32, or UEFI? Let's see how you answered. 55% of you, just over half, said EFS is what you're using. 39% of you say it's BitLocker that you're using. We have 3% that said UEFI, 2% that said FAT32, and 1% that said Active Directory, effectively a three-way tie for third. It's really between EFS and BitLocker, isn't it? With EFS just getting a few more percentage points at 56% than BitLocker. EFS, of course, stands for Encrypting File System. It allows you to encrypt different parts of the file system, just the things that you would like to be able to encrypt. So EFS is great to have that. You do have to be running at least NTFS to be able to do that. It encrypts at the file system level. It's supported many different versions of Windows, probably the ones that we're using today for the most part, Windows 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. And of course in Windows 11, although Windows 11 not part of the current version of exam objectives. We have no idea if they'll add Windows 11 to the next version or not. Probably will, won't they? Since it's out, I would think they would. It uses your login credentials to be able to provide this encryption. There's a whole lot of different things that happens behind the scenes to unlock that and get the key that's used for that encryption. But if you, for some reason, modify the login administratively, you could potentially cause these EFS files to no longer be accessible. They'll just always be encrypted until you get the correct key. So EFS, the encrypting file system, is what we were looking for because we were looking for a small folder of files on their Windows SSD. We weren't looking for the entire drive or an entire partition to be encrypted. We were just encrypting one little tiny folder of files on this Windows device. And to be able to do a grouping of files at EFS, if you wanted to do the entire file system, then you would use BitLocker. BitLocker doesn't allow you to pick and choose what you want to encrypt or not encrypt. It just encrypts everything. It encrypts the operating system. It encrypts your applications. It encrypts your data files. It encrypts your caching. It encrypts everything. So if somebody was to steal your laptop and they pull out your drive and they plug it into their own system, they wouldn't be able to see any of your data because the entire thing is encrypted with BitLocker. If you were using just EFS, they'd be able to see all of the files that were not encrypted with EFS. So there's your difference there. And you'll notice that you, as I mentioned on here, you have to have NTFS to be able to use EFS. Well, that's important. Notice that NTFS is not on this list. So you weren't in this situation with this question where you had to choose between two really good answers. In fact, most of the, well, really all the questions on your exam will be relatively straightforward. You're not going to find situations where two answers might be correct. I see a lot of bad questions on the internet. People forward me a lot of bad questions on the internet. I really can't answer them. I get so many that I just say, go back to where you found that one and ask them why they wrote such a bad question. So in this case, only one answer could possibly be correct. It is indeed answer C, EFS. Would not be Active Directory. Active Directory is that group policy, centralized management, centralized database of devices and users that you could have. That directory service of Active Directory useful, but doesn't provide any encryption functionality. It's not going to help you. FAT32 is a file system, and although it's a very capable file system, it doesn't provide any encryption functionality as part of the file system. FAT32 isn't going to help you. And the UEFI is a type of BIOS. The UEFI is probably the most common type of BIOS we would see on our systems these days. And UEFI doesn't provide encryption of individual files in an operating system. That's not what the BIOS does. The only option here that makes any sense, the one that is the best option, answer C, EFS. 57% of you got that one absolutely right. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, and of course you would know what that is if you were looking for it. If you have no idea what continuing education unit credit is, then this probably doesn't apply to you. But I would be glad to send you an email with the details certifying that you must have watched this. Go to ProfessorMesser.com, and at the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, there is a Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, click that, and it will ask you for your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put the November 2021 Core 2 study group, so I know where this came from. And then put the super secret code word of the month, Active Directory. Active Directory is the super secret code word of the month. That is what you would put into that message. You can then put anything else you would like in the rest of the body of that message if you would like. I read through all of these. I'm not able to respond back to all of these, but I do read through every single one of them. Send that to me, and then I will send you an email that certifies you must have watched this because you sent me the super secret code word and you sent it in the proper way, which is just as important. If you somehow get to me the super secret code word and it wasn't done in the process I just mentioned, I can't send you back an email, primarily because it's an automated process that expects it to be in this particular format. So that's the only way I'm able to do it, because I get hundreds of requests for these every month. So there's a process I go through where I can click it. It automates creating the response to you. I look through it, make sure it's okay, and I click go. So I do go through those and make them happen. Make sure you're familiar with that process so that I will be able to get that to you. Let's do another question. Got another one. For those of you working on your 220-1002, you have to know how to remove malware. Of course, my option for removing malware is to delete everything. I think there is no other option. But there may be times when you have to remove the malware to get to something so that you can then nuke the entire system. So the question I have for you is, which of the malware removal steps is designed to prevent reinfection? Is it quarantine the infected system, scan for malware, identify malware symptoms, disable system restore, or remove the malware? Which of the malware removal steps is designed to prevent reinfection? Is it quarantine the infected system, scan for malware, identify malware symptoms, disable system restore, or remove the malware? I guess here we're really looking for the best answer in this one, because I feel like I could answer this one in 3 different options here. But I'm not looking for something that's vague. I'm looking for very specific and most specific answer for this one. See if you happen to know what it is. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in the answer. You'll know what that is. There's a few options here. All of these are part of the malware removal process. They are all listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. In fact, some folks in the chat room were thinking, you've probably seen the CompTIA exam objectives. You saw there's a lot of acronyms on that sheet of paper. Yes, there is. There's a lot of acronyms in the CompTIA exam objectives. It does help you if you know what those acronyms are. It does help you. If you not only know what the acronyms are, when I say that, I'm not saying that you should have a flashcard that says MSDS on one side and material safety data sheet on the other side. That doesn't help you, quite honestly. You have to know what that's used for. And in fact, in what we do in our industry, we talk in acronyms. There may be times when you use an acronym so much you forget what the acronym words are. You don't know what the words are for that acronym, but you know what it does. It's more important that you know what it does than know what the actual words are. Although with many of these acronyms, knowing the words gives away what it does. So maybe learning some of those acronyms might actually help in your mind remember what that thing happens to do. The exam will not ask you questions like, what do the letters MSDS stand for? You'll never see that. You'll never get that. But the acronyms that are in the exam, although you may have not heard anyone use them, we use them all the time in the industry. They're pretty spot on. There are some in that list that maybe are more unusual to see than others, but all of the acronyms are pretty spot on with the ones that we use in the industry. There's not any question about that. So make sure you're familiar with it. Let's see how you did with this one. Which of the malware removal steps is designed to prevent reinfection? Is it quarantine the infected system, scan for malware, identify malware symptoms, disable system restore, or remove the malware? Let's see how you answered. We have 50% of you, exactly half, that say disable system restore is what you want to do. 24% say quarantining the infected system will prevent reinfection. We've got 13% said removing malware will prevent the reinfection. Not true either. 8% said identify malware symptoms, and 6% said scan for malware. What we're trying to do when we get rid of this malware, we don't want the system to get the malware again, to reinfect itself. And one of the things that malware does really well is it gets into your system and hides so that eventually it can reinfect. Even if you remove it from its initial installation, you reboot and suddenly you're infected again. They're even a little more crafty. They will go into your restore points on the system and they will infect all of your restore points, because that's what people would think to do. They go, oh, I just got infected. Let me use the system protection feature to rewind back to a previous time and date when I didn't have the malware. So I'll just take my configuration, rewind it back to a week ago when the malware didn't exist. Problem solved. Except the malware has already infected your restore points as well. So you're effectively restoring back to a version that was not infected with malware a week ago, but now that malware is on your system, it is freshly infected with malware. So that doesn't help you. So you need to delete all of your restore points. And an easy way to delete all of your restore points is to simply disable system protection. When you disable it, it automatically deletes all of those restore points so that you won't have an opportunity to accidentally go back in time, reinfect yourself, and then everything is infected again. Disabling system restore is the right answer. 51% chose D, disable system restore. That's the one you would want to choose. Now, 23% of you said you quarantine the infected system. That's one of the first things you do. After you identify a malware symptom, you want to make sure the system can't infect other systems. So you disconnect it from the network. You make sure that nothing is connected to the device. It's not on the wireless network. You are quarantined. Now, that will prevent it from potentially infecting other systems, but that doesn't help you prevent any type of reinfection on that system. So that's not going to help you. That's not what we're looking to do. We want to prevent getting reinfected, not prevent some other devices from getting infected. So it's an important consideration in this particular question that quarantining the infected system doesn't prevent your system from being infected again. So that's not our right answer. 13% said just to remove the malware. Problem solved. But as I just mentioned, you could remove the malware, but it could still be in your restore points to reinfect that system. So simply removing malware, I will tell you that you never know if you really got rid of it. But simply removing it by itself does not prevent any type of reinfection. It just removes what's there. So that's not going to help you. We've got 7% that said identify malware symptoms. Well, that's what we did in the very beginning. That's our first step. That doesn't help us prevent reinfection. In fact, if you identify the symptoms, you're already infected. So obviously not going to help getting reinfected. And then scanning for malware will tell us that we are reinfected, but would not prevent the reinfection. So the only thing that makes any sense here is to disable the system restore. Answer D is what we were looking for. That would prevent you from being reinfected from a restore point. In the chat room, Fahid with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much for your donation. Didn't even put a message in. Just says, here's something to help the cause. We sure appreciate that. And it does help. Every little bit helps keep this crazy experiment going. We appreciate your support, and thank you for the super chat. The question, the anti-malware will not detect the malware in system restore. It might. It could, but we didn't talk about in this particular process of doing that. In fact, you'll notice the disabling of system restore happens well before you would ever scan for malware on your system, because I'll tell you, every malware does it. That's why. We just know they're going to be infected. So just delete them now. There's no reason to even have them there to scan later on. Just delete them. There's nothing good that will come from that. So that's why we always say delete them and you're good. Let's see if we can fit another question in. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more. Since we're here, we're talking 220-1002. Here's definitely a 220-1002 question, which asks, which of the following would be the best choice for extinguishing an electrical fire? Would it be water, foam, compressed air, sand, or a dry chemical? Which of the following would be the best choice for extinguishing an electrical fire? Is it water, foam, compressed air, sand, or dry chemical? If you think you know the answer, there's your link. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We'll see how you do with your safety questions. There is a whole section on safety questions on the 220-1002 exam, and you do need to know what those are. Yeah, you should probably stay away from your hairspray. Not a problem for me. I'm covered. I couldn't find any. There's none here. I don't know where any would happen to be. So that's at least on my side, a little bit of a safety tip. I'm covered. Covered on that one. Yeah, I didn't put axe as an option, did I? Now, are you referring to axe as the spray or a physical axe? See, two different things, since we're going back and forth about hairspray. So that's sort of how we sit with both of those. One of the things you have to know for the 1002 exam is that they do ask you questions specific to safety, to disposal, to these other topics. So I make sure to add them into these lists. We do new questions every month. So I always like to mix them up a little bit. And this certainly is something you need to know from the exam. We have you popping your answers in now. I'm looking for a few more to put their answers in. I know a physical axe seems like it's something you could use, isn't it? I don't know if that's really the right answer here, though. Certainly not one of the available options. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, or axed in this particular case, which of the following would be the best choice for extinguishing an electrical fire? Do you use water, foam, compressed air, sand, or a dry chemical? And let's look at your results, where 61% of you say you would use a dry chemical. That's what you would take advantage of for this particular problem. We have 20% that said foam is what we would use. 13% said sand. 6% said compressed air. 0% said water. Isn't water what you use to put out a fire? Wouldn't that make sense? Of course it doesn't. That's why 0% of you chose that, because it's an electrical fire. The last thing that you want to really get into is dealing with electric fires, anything dealing with electricity. So you don't want anything that's wet when you're dealing with any electrical type of system. So an electrical fire safety, we don't want to use water. We don't want to use foam. We want to use some type of dry chemical that is designed to either sit on top of the fire, of the source of the fire, and extinguish it, or remove the oxygen from the air to limit the scope and effect of the fire is what we would use. So for electrical fire safety, anything that's a dry chemical, anything that is, this one's a CO2, for example, and being able to remove the oxygen from the air is great to be able to do this. These are the options available. None of these are great, perfect options. There are pluses and minuses for all of the available options. Carbon dioxide and dry chemicals are two very different kinds of extinguishing methods. Both have advantages and disadvantages associated with them. But in this particular question, you didn't have both of those to choose from. You only have one to choose from, which was a dry chemical. And the question asked, of all of these, which would be the best choice? So let's go through each one of these to be able to see what this is. We have, well, I already mentioned that water and foam are water-based or water itself. We don't want to use those, so A and B are out. Compressed air isn't going to help you put out an electrical fire. Can you imagine there with compressed air? It's like, no, it's not going to work. We cannot blow the fire out with compressed air. And sand, How would we even do that? You know, I guess sand has some functionality from a fire perspective, but could you imagine sand in a data center? Be one of the worst things you could use to put out fires, because the sand would just be everywhere. And probably would not help us very much. Sand and electricity that's not necessarily the best way to quash an electrical fire, to extinguish it. So that's not what we would choose either. The best option, the best choice of these 5 options by far is the dry chemical. Answer E is what we were looking for. That's the one you should choose from. Some people in the chat room were saying, well, don't we need to know the different types of fire extinguishers? Well, they're not listed in the exam objectives. So if it's not listed in the exam objectives, it's a detail you do not need to know. So I would tell you, don't worry about the different types of fire extinguishers. They don't really care about that piece of it. They really care about more about what's these, like the question we have here, what is in that extinguisher? What would you be using to be able to do that? Dry chemical is, in this particular case, the right answer. If you answered E, 63% of you got that one absolutely right. As I mentioned, the objectives are so important. They're free. They tell you everything you need to know about solving a particular or understanding what's going to be on a particular exam. And you can download them from CompTIA. I've got a link to the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. That will get you there. They make a great checklist if you're trying to determine, have I studied everything? Or maybe you're looking at some other question somewhere and they're asking you about the classes of a fire extinguisher and you're wondering, are classes of fire extinguishers even on the exam? Let me look at the definitive source, the CompTIA exam objectives, where it will show you the classes aren't listed, so you don't need to know those. There's a world of content that's not on the exam objectives. So focus only on the objectives and you'll be focusing on exactly what you need to know for the exam. Go to professormesser.com/objectives to download the CompTIA exam objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. We've got 2 more A+ study groups next month. The Core 1 study group next month is on December 7th. The Core 2 study group on December the 9th. And you can see in December, we're kind of cramming things together. We've got Network Plus. We've got Network Plus next week. And then we've got Network Plus on December 14th. We've got Security Plus in 2 weeks here in November. And then we've got Security Plus on the 16th of December as well. And these times and dates can sometimes change because, you know, everybody's life has chaos. Sometimes I have to move things around. The best way to know when the next live event is going to be is to follow this link right here at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/calendar. Will take you right to the event calendar. You'll know exactly when it's going to be. And if I have to change any of these dates, I change them first in that calendar. So the instant I change it, it's instantly updated for you. You will know immediately what that next event is going to be from the calendar that's there at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A. I can't believe it, but we did, and we made it. You guys did really well this time with the questions, too. It was a great Q&A session. Come back next month. We'd love to have you come back for our Core 1 and Core 2 study groups. If you're studying for Network Plus, come back next week. We'd love to have you come back for that. But stick around. We've got another hour of Q&A. I'm going to stop asking the questions. I'll have you start asking the questions. We'll take questions from the chat room in the after show. Don't forget about my practice exams for Core 1 and Core 2. Not just Core 1. It says Core 1 there, but also for Core 2. ProfessorMesser.com/1002success. We'll get you there for the Core 2 course notes and practice exams. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers on my website. Do not pay full price for your vouchers. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers and get my free exam hacks ebook as well. We are, of course, on all of these different social media sites. So if you want to find me on Discord, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, you just type in ProfessorMesser.com/ the name of that thing. So it will get you there. So at least you've got that option to be able to find what you need for all of this. Thanks for being here in this first hour. Thanks for the Q&A. It's always a great time. Stick around for the after show. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group. Well, let's see if I can get things started here. I need to change around a little bit of a graphic, so if you bear with me in just a moment. I will be taking questions from the chat room. So this is the chat room that is available on the YouTube. If you're on my website at professormesser.com/live, that chat that's there is the YouTube chat, if you're wondering. So there is probably a good way, at least an idea to be able to break through these. It's the live chat that's on YouTube and the live chat that's on my site, exactly the same chat. So you don't have to shift around. If you're already in a place and you're seeing the live chat, you're in the right place. So at least that's there. You can find all of those things. I will take questions from the chat room. It can be questions about anything. It doesn't have to be about A+, doesn't have to be about the Core 2. We'll step through what each of them happen to be. In the chat room, Christian asks, you probably get this all the time. We do it a little bit, but it's worth going through again, I think, which is Network Plus or CCNA. Those are two networking certifications. So Networking Plus certifications are always a bit of a challenge. Network Plus is designed to be an entry-level networking certification. For someone who is starting on a help desk, someone that's starting at the very beginning maybe of doing some type of networking, Network Plus is a good choice. CCNA is not an entry-level certification. It is kind of a tier 2. It's the next level up, I would say, from Network Plus. Now, some people will tell you, just skip Network Plus, just go straight to CCNA. I see these recommendations all the time. This is not a global recommendation that everybody should follow, however. If you are planning to go into network administration, you're planning to manage switches and routers, you're already working towards that job, and the job description specifically lists the CCNA as the prerequisite, then of course a CCNA may be a better choice to go for at the beginning. But you're going to have to spend more time learning the fundamentals when you go through the CCNA course because you didn't get the Network Plus first. The CCNA does clearly build on the CCNA builds on Network Plus. So if you've already taken the Network Plus, there's a whole grouping of fundamentals you don't have to worry about. You can instead focus on that Cisco command line from a switch, Cisco command line for a router, troubleshooting these routers and switches and all of the configurations that go between, dealing with the spanning tree, dealing with the dynamic routing protocols, all of the other beyond the scope of switching and routing they have on the CCNA these days. CCNA is a tough exam. And I would never tell somebody that I'll just throw one of those out and replace it with the other. They're not interchangeable. So don't get into that trap. You should take the certification that makes sense for what you are doing, not the certification that everybody else says you should be taking. What do they know about what you should be doing with your life? That's the part I've always felt is a little odd, is what do you want to do? Then build your own set of pathway to success for what you want to do. That's the important part. Question in the chat room from Josh, is there a way to collect CEUs before you get your certification? No, there is not. CompTIA will not accept a CEU that was acquired prior to you being certified. You can't renew a certification that you don't have yet. It's their mind, what they're thinking about. So CEU is not going to help you. And quite honestly, most people are probably using the CertMaster CE these days, or they're taking a higher level cert. I don't see a ton of people collecting CEUs, at least not like they used to, probably because there are easier ways to go about that process. So I tell people, don't go through the CEU process until you have a reason to collect the CEUs. That's going to be more important than going through and trying to collect CEUs before you're certified yet. They won't accept them. They'll tell you, no, that was a CEU you collected prior to being certified. That doesn't count. It doesn't help you at all. I do want to spend some time talking about something I got from one of the folks I work with kind of day to day on my website. I have all kinds of security tools on my site. Maybe this goes back to my years of being a security systems engineer and working with next generation firewalls. And I'm very sensitive to how much access people have to certain parts of my site and how they get to my site. So I spend a lot of time on security. I'm also selling books and people are putting credit cards in. So I make sure that the entire process is as secure as possible. For example, if you buy something from my site with a credit card, I don't have a way to see the credit card. It is completely off-site from me. Even if I wanted to see your credit card, I could not see it. So there's some things I do on my site to make sure you're safe. Well, I got a message from one of the tools, just one of the many tools I use for security. This is WordFence. It is a WordPress specific firewalling tool that I use on my site, and obviously caught an interest from me because these are things that we're dealing with all the time. They specifically wrote this last week about a widespread remote working scam underway. Now, to be fair, this is nothing new. I've heard about these scams for a very long time, but there seems to be an uptick in the number of scams that are occurring. Maybe it's because we have so many people now looking to go back to work. Maybe it's because we have so many people that are now at home and all of your work is done without going into an office. That becomes a little bit more of a difficult problem to know if you're dealing with the right one. So this is where, if you ever get into the case where you're interviewing, it's best to go through a set of due diligence to make sure the people you're talking to are completely legitimate. The one that they mention in this on the WordFence site, this is from their blog. If you go to their site, you can just click the blog. I think there's a blog entry that's at the top. They talk about the attack itself. It's mostly the bad check scam, kind of the generic term of this, where they hire you, they have you purchase all of the things you need for your office, and they send you a check that covers all of that you deposit and you use that money to purchase things with. But there's so much in the check, there's money left over. So they tell you, once you purchase that, send us the difference back. Write us a check back for the difference, and you send them, or really most of the time it's not a check. They do it in other ways so they can get the money right then. They usually do it through gift cards. Just go out and get a gift card and send us the gift card number and we're even. If anybody ever says the word to you, gift card, something is up. I would say if your family says the word gift card to you, maybe something is up. But this is one of these situations where it is the bad check scam. What happens is you deposit this check, the bank gives you the money from the check, and then the check doesn't clear a week later. And the bank, because that's what they do, they take the money back. They take the money away from you now. So you've now, let's say they send you a $2,000, you spend $1,000 on things for your new office, then you give them $1,000 that was left over back. They got your $1,000. You now lost $2,000. Effectively, that's what just happened to you. So this is a pretty bad scam. They do mention in this blog entry how to avoid that scam. People who are they are going after people that are in the hiring process, which is just awful to do that. Just horrible to do that. But these are horrible people that are doing this. But this scam itself, not a new scam. I would highly recommend, if you have the time, go out to Reddit. The /r/scams on Reddit is a fantastically informational subreddit because they have all kinds of scams detailed. It is remarkable how many types of scams are out there. And I, through the last year, have read through many scams of people that find a hiring scam, an interview scam, getting a job scam. They're in there. So that's the important part. Anytime they tell you, we're going to send you a check and it's too much money and you have to pay us back, it's a scam. There is never a case where a company would ever do that. You don't have to call the issuing bank to see if the check is good. The check is not good. That's not how you get items for your home office. The way that companies do this is you purchase the items and then you send the company a reimbursement. And then they add that reimbursement to your paycheck, or they cut you a separate check for that. They never ask you for gift cards. They don't send you gift cards. Although I have had companies give me gift cards before. Like, good job, here's $25 Amex gift card. That does happen. But I already work for them. I've worked for them for the years. I know that's a good card. This wasn't a case where I have to send them, here's a $25 gift card. Now use $10 of that, give us 15 back. That would never happen. That would never happen. So don't be in that situation. Be very careful about the hiring process. Be very careful about what people are telling you. We want to believe so many different things. Oh, we're getting a job. Finally, I found the job. I work from home. They were so nice. What's great about this particular blog entry is they show the entire text message breakdown. They go through an interview process. They have multiple people involved. This is a very involved and believable scam. So I understand why people find themselves being victims, but it's not something you should deal with. Anytime you hear the word check or gift card, it's a scam. Now, this is not the only time when the bad check scam is used. Bad check scam is used all the time for other things. But we talk in this particular study group about getting hired, getting a job, getting a better job. Don't find yourself quitting your job, taking this new job, and then finding out the new job is a scam. That would just be awful. Don't be in that situation. To have that there. Questions from the chat room. Some folks who are going through taking some of these quizzes, practice exams. You're seeing some of the numbers in there. In this particular case, Vahid says we're taking them, get more of 90% of them right. Are you ready for the exam? Well, you got 90% right on this particular practice exam. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to translate to 90%, but it certainly means that you have a very good understanding of the content contained within that particular practice exam. And I tend to mix it up pretty good in my practice exams. So that's a very good percentage. You'll notice there's a section in the beginning of the book on how to use this book, is literally what I call it. And I list out what the percentages are for getting a certain number right and where I think you should be before you take the exam. 90% is a great number. You may very well be ready. Maybe take a couple of others. Make sure you're getting a very good grouping. Maybe every test you take, you're getting around 90%. Yeah, I think you're ready for the exam at that point. That's a pretty good number to have that. So yeah, you're good. And thank you again for the $5 super chat, getting my attention. I saw you there. You know, I appreciate that though. Thank you so much. Another $10 super chat, or 10 AED super chat from Abu Bakr. I know I got that wrong, but it's close enough. And I appreciate what you are putting into the chat with the super chat. So thank you so much. I do like that, that you support what we do here. You care enough about what we do here to be able to support it. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's so many scams. You could spend a long time in the subreddit, the /r/scams subreddit there. There's Bitcoin scams, ATM scams, but they kind of teach you what to look for. And if you're ever planning to get into the IT security side, you're going to be on the side of keeping these types of scams out of your company. Some of these scams we talk about in Security Plus, the bad invoice scam. There's the scam where somebody who is lower in the totem pole of a company gets a message from the CEO that says, I'm stuck in this building, but I need gift cards for everybody. Go buy them and send me the numbers. But it's not really the CEO. Anytime you hear gift card, that's your clue. Gift card. That's how they're doing it, because they instantly get the money from the gift card. They have you, what happens is they have you buy the gift card. They have you scratch out the number. They have you give you both of those numbers from the gift card, and they immediately use them. So that is how that works. So the instant you give it to them, they have the money. There are some fantastic YouTube videos of people that scam the scammers. If you ever wanted some type of vigilante justice, or digital justice anyway, where they scam the scammers to the point that they've even been able to, because these scammers often will remote desktop into people's computers, they figure out where they're remote desktoping from. They check the IP addressing. They figure out where these places are. And they're, in some cases, they have hacked into the scammers' networks to be able to see the entire office where everybody's there on the phones trying to scam the money from everyone, and even gained access to their systems and delete. They have all of these spreadsheets that show all the people they've scammed. And then they've in some cases, they've even deleted it. Now, I don't necessarily agree that that going after the scammers and doing that type of thing, because that's illegal, even though you're doing it to a scammer, still illegal. I don't necessarily condone that, but I understand. So that's one of those situations that's just fun to watch. It's not you that's going to be in trouble. And in fact, that person probably is not going to be in trouble at all, because the scammers are in a different country. It's unlikely the scammers will come after you for calling them on the scam. That's where we go. That's where I feel anyway. When you're scamming the scammers, it's not a bad day. That's a pretty good day. And some of them are very, very humorous. Have I tried Windows 11 yet? Yes, I have. In fact, I could start one up while we're here. I run Windows 11 in a VM because I quite literally do not have a piece of equipment in my studio that will run it natively. I do have plenty of Windows 10 systems, but none with the newer UE5 BIOS version. So I do have Windows that I've been running. So the Windows 11, there it is. Yeah, kind of get rid of this now. There it is. I ran it for a little bit. You know, it's okay. It's not bad. It's doing a thing there with all of that. So I got stuff going on. That there's a lot of files there. They were just because I'm running this as a Windows configuration on my Mac OS as a VM, it's pulling the files from an existing folder that's on my Mac system. So it looks like I was very busy in my Windows. No, I really barely touched it and gone through it. There will be a lot of this that I will be doing shortly, because we don't know what the exam objectives will be for the next version of the A+, but I suspect, wouldn't you think they would put Windows 11 on it? I mean, Windows 11 is out, and the exam objectives for A+ are not. So we'll see. Is it inspired by Mac OS? I wouldn't go quite that far. Is it inspired by Ubuntu? I don't know. I kind of like that it is a little sleeker. It's kind of nice, but it's not so different that it's something so unusual to work with. A lot of the things behind the scenes that we are most interested in, all of the administrative tools, the control panel functionality, it's all very similar to Windows 10. So there's not much that we have to worry about from a adjustment perspective. There are some things that have changed fundamentally in the operating system behind the scenes. There's some things administratively that will be slightly different, but it's not such a jump that we have to worry about it. Up until, most recently, we didn't even know that they were going to have a Windows 11. Microsoft was adamant that they would not be doing a Windows 11. We'll do Windows 10 forever. We'll just keep doing Windows 10. And then I guess they realized there's actually revenue associated with the upgrade of an operating system when you change the number. I can only guess that's what happened, is they suddenly realized, wait, we've now gotten rid of a very successful revenue stream for ourselves. You know what we said about never having another version? I don't know what you were talking about. That was crazy, wasn't it? Windows 11 coming to you in October. They certainly changed their minds very quickly, didn't they? So that is why we have Windows 11. But I don't think it really changed that much. They could have just changed Windows 10 to be what that is and called it Windows 10, you know, Big Sur. Nope, can't call it that. Call it Windows 10 Monterey. No, I can't call it that. Call it Windows 10 something. They should have their own naming. You know, Apple has Mac OS 10, OS X, which is really correctly called OS 10. That's been around a very long time, and it's still OS 10. But it's changed dramatically through the years. So it's interesting to see how different companies handle these operating system changes. So will there be a Windows 12? Will there be Windows 13? There won't be a Windows 13, would there? In the US? They wouldn't do that, would they? Should we take the bets now? You got to wonder. But I've been using it a little bit. I got it up and running because I knew that perhaps after the beginning of the year, I may need a Windows 11. The way that it works in my Mac OS, I use Parallels in Mac OS. And Parallels has a virtual BIOS setting running the latest. Really, it's a virtual TPM version 2.0, because I don't have TPM 2.0 in this machine. In fact, this is a 2017 Mac that's in front of me. It is not anywhere close to being new or with the latest technologies in it. But it's very good for when it came out. I got the higher end when it came out, but it doesn't have TPM 2.0. So the virtual TPM 2.0 runs Windows 11 just fine. So it works great there. We'll have to see. Other questions from the chat room. My thoughts on the new M1X MacBook Pros. The new MacBook Pros from Apple were introduced a couple weeks ago. They introduced them a brand new chipset, new functionalities, faster, bigger, better, stronger, prettier screens, some really nice capabilities on the new MacBook Pros. For those of you that kind of follow us, all of the slides you see come from this MacBook Pro that's right here. This is also a 2017 MacBook Pro. I kind of bought these pretty much at the same time. It does not have an HDMI interface on it. You can't see it from where you are, but there we go. There's the dongle on the side hooked into the USB-C, which breaks out the HDMI interface that finally gets onto the system that allows you to see the screen during the live stream. So there's a whole process that takes place. The newer MacBook Pros just have an HDMI interface on the side. Just plug directly in. So very useful to have that. But they are pretty nice in their speeds. I want to try one out just to see how well it will do rendering. You know, the new chipsets that are in the MacBook, the new CPUs they have, are remarkable in their capabilities, including functionality in the newer, bigger ones that can do some of the H.264 compression, the codec capabilities in the CPU itself, in hardware, which I don't have in my current system. All of the rendering I do now is all in software. So I've already put my purchase in for the MacBook Pro. I hope to have it hopefully this month, hopefully in a couple weeks. So by the time we do these study groups in December, hopefully this MacBook Pro that's next to me will be a new MacBook Pro that has the newer capabilities. We'll have to see if it works out there. The situation I have with Windows 11 is just being able to run it on a system. They really pushed the limits, and TPM 2.0 probably did it for most people, because the system that I would normally use for streaming is the one I plan to put at Windows 11 on. It's too old of a motherboard. It doesn't have TPM 2.0. It doesn't have the supported chips. It's not on the list. The fact the CPU, it's a relatively new CPU in the last 5 years. 5 years is too many years. 5 years is too old. So you have to have really brand new or relatively new hardware to run Windows 11. So this will be one of those where the systems you buy now could run Windows 11, but things from maybe even 2 years ago may not. It's unusual that we would run into that. It used to be that things you had for 2 or 3 years, you'd be able to upgrade to the latest version of Windows. So I think this will be a more of a gradual installation for Windows. I think probably what Microsoft found was that most of their Windows installations like this were really being driven out of new purchases anyway. So we'll just do that. The problem that you are seeing in the chat room, the question is, when will the price of GPUs go back to normal? That's going to be very difficult. The chip shortage is a real thing. The resources available to get the chips is a significant problem. Chip shortage, not just for IT type equipment, but chip shortage for anything, for automobiles, for other pieces of equipment, becomes a little bit of a challenge. But obviously the chips that are used and the technologies used for these GPUs is really cutting edge. It's a very specific type of memory and CPU in those particular systems. So it's very difficult to know when the whole process around the world is going to pick back up again. Now, fortunately, we're starting to see some things changing as far as a number of virus cases around the world. So we're noticing that, for example, those of us in Florida, it's practically gone. From the perspective of what we were concerned about. We were concerned about a pandemic. Well, it's not a pandemic in Florida. We're not even, well, of course, we have other options. We have other ways to mitigate this. So technically, it's no longer a pandemic anyway. You've already got some type of antivirus for humans, then it's more of an endemic type situation. But now that here in Florida anyway, it sort of ran its course. We've now realized a lot of the things we did, some places locked down, some places didn't lock down. Turns out they had kind of the same experience. So we're really not sure what to take away from mitigation. Some places did really heavy lockdowns, some places did none, and the results were identical. So it's kind of thrown us. We don't know what to make of all of this. We have to take all the data back and then now parse through it and figure out what are we doing. But from the perspective of us in Florida, it's kind of gone. So we're good. We're just kind of waiting for everyone else to catch up and get things going. But of course, around the world, we're seeing, again, an increase, decrease. Kind of interesting to be able to see that. I don't know that we can particularly point to any particular reason why the results were identical like that. We don't know. We can guess, and certainly people can make some speculation on that. We just don't know yet. Nobody has the data. We're all guessing. And I think whenever we start making guesses, we kind of guess as to what we want it to be. Here's what I really want it to be, but that may not be the actual case either. When is the next class for Network Plus? The next Network Plus study group is next week on Wednesday, so in 6 days. Come on back for that one. You can always find the next event, professormesser.com/calendar. It's always there. There's also a calendar link on the Professor Messer website. We'll tell you exactly when that's going to be. On the chat room, Shifty CD asks, I took the Core 1 about 6 to 7 months ago. Congratulations. Sounds like you passed because you say, I'm trying to get my Core 2 finished before the test updates. Well, then you got about a year, so I think you're okay. There's not going to be an update anytime soon. You're fine. Are there any key things I should review from the Core 1 before I take the Core 2? Nope. Core 2 is effectively its own exam. Go to the Core 2 exam objectives, learn everything that's on there as objectives. If you know everything on the Core 2 objectives, you're fine. Done. Don't go back and look at Core 1 if you're taking Core 2. Those are completely different. There is not an update. There may be new exams coming first or second quarter of the year, next year, but the existing exam doesn't go away. It still sticks around another 6 to 9 months. So that's why I tell people we could very easily still be taking the existing 1001 and 1002 exams at this time next year. So you got 10 to 12 months, I think. Maybe even more. With the Security Plus and Network Plus they released recently in the past year, they not only came out with those later than expected, but the overlap time frame was 9 months. So you could easily, if they do that again, they may or they may not. This is pure speculation. But if they do that again, you could have the existing exam still going until the end of next year, easily. The exams that you would run into now, worst case, it's going to be around till June. That's the worst case. Let's say they came out with a new exam on July 1. You got until the end of June. So you got plenty of time. So that's fine. If you're trying to shoot for the 1,000, past 1,001 a week ago, trying to shoot for the end of the month to take the 1,002, what are you pushing this for? Why are you pushing it till a month? Month is a very short time frame. Usually people are 2 and 3 months to study for one of these exams. So unless you may already have experience in the industry, though. You've already done this. You've already worked on a help desk, but you just need the A+ to show an employer. Some people can do it in a couple of weeks and they're done. So that may be your situation. So the question of how long do you study for an exam, what is the smart amount of time, is different depending on who you are. So if you are someone who's already knowledgeable in a lot of these technologies, you've been using Windows for years, you've been managing working with users and working on a help desk and managing their Windows desktops for a while, you could probably walk into this with very little study. So in a couple weeks, you could be done with a 1002. If you've never touched Windows before, well, now it's going to take a little bit longer because you need to learn all these different topics. You need to work with it. You need to do some hands-on. All of those things happen too. So it just depends on you, your personal knowledge, and the type of studying that you're doing. So if it's a good idea, smart idea or not, it's really up to you. The real key, and what I tell people, if you can go through the exam objectives and check off everything in the objectives that you know it, and you could explain it to someone else, then you're ready to take the exam. So there you go. If that takes 2 weeks, great. That takes 6 months, that's what it takes. It's however long it takes for you to learn those things. Everybody's a little bit different. Other people, another question in the chat room, and this is one that does drive me crazy as well, David, in the chat room, who says, my computer in the Pearson Vue lab kept freezing up on me. Had to restart multiple times. That's in an actual exam center, it sounds like. I failed with a 654 out of 700. Can you challenge that? Threw me off my game. You should absolutely open a ticket with Pearson Vue and say, I was there. It kept breaking. Did you get the time back? So when you had to restart, I have seen cases where people have said, I had 30 minutes left on my exam. It froze. It took us 10 minutes to get the thing rebooted. But when it started up, I still have my 30 minutes. Now, if that's the case, that's a tough argument. But if you took 10 minutes to restart and it started up and you had 20 minutes left, like, where's the extra 10 minutes? Yeah, that's worth complaining about. And so that it's not something that if they took time from you and you were not able to do it, then that's a pretty good argument. But as David says in a follow-up, okay, didn't lose any time. So they rebooted, got there, and you still had 30 minutes left. Well, it's kind of tough to make an argument there because they still got you the time you needed to pass the exam. Does it throw you off your game a little bit? Yeah, it does. But it's one of those where you just kind of have to be ready for that. Those things happen during a live test. It's happened to me. It's happened to other people. It happens whether you're in a testing center. It happens whether you're testing at home. So that's one where, I think if you're ever in a case where this happens, don't be thrown by it. In fact, you should just expect that something is going to go sideways. And if you're already expecting that and you're making notes about, okay, I had 30 minutes left, let's reboot, no problem. In fact, gives you a chance to kind of sit back for a second. We'll reboot. They're going to get it running. When it comes back, oh, still got 30 minutes. Okay, we're good. It's all about where your head is, where you're thinking, what the concepts are of what you're looking for on these. But because there was a problem, it's worth asking. Like I was in the middle of this exam. It died on me. just threw everything off. We had to get the person in there. It was such a thing. And I never got back into the exam. Could I just retake this? All they could say is no. That's a pretty good one. I'm fine with rejection. That's my middle name. So people tell me no all the time. Well, what if we did this? No. Okay. Just thought I'd ask. That's just normal. Heck, there's people that told me no. Videos on YouTube, really? Like, okay. People tell me no all the time. That's where I would indeed at least open a ticket with them. Give them the chance to decide whether this is something they can fix or not. And then you're good. I think that's all you can really do. For what I've seen most recently for people, especially people who've been working at home and something has gone wrong, and there have been times when the Pearson Vue online system has just died and they've had significant problems on the back end. It doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened with people. And they've contacted Pearson Vue, and Pearson Vue said, you're absolutely right. Here's a voucher. Go take it again. That was something that legitimately could be seen as an issue during your exam. So I think that one of those would be at least giving them the opportunity to tell you no. And they'll be able to make that decision. They've got all the records on it. They know exactly what happened during your exam. They've got all the audit logs. They can tell. So put it in their lap. They'll be able to tell you. Also in the chat room, I want to purchase your Success Bundle. Will I need anything else for my Security Plus studies? Well, I always recommend a number of different things for Security Plus. I can't possibly provide you with every possible study material in the world that you would ever need for Security Plus. Everybody's a little bit different. But my Success Bundle obviously provides the videos, audio, course notes, practice exams, and other things. On my website, though, I realize people would like probably other options. Under the Security Plus training, I've got some Security Plus study recommendations at the very bottom. And those study resources, they do have my videos and my Success Bundle there. I put some books there that tend to be popular in the industry anyway. There are some other resources available directly from CompTIA, and this is another one of those examples where I can get a discount for you, so I put it on my site. Things like CertMaster Learn is sort of an all-in-one books, video, Q&A, sort of central place to go that just has everything in it. Sort of the ultimate in learning is the CertMaster Learn. It is not inexpensive, but it's kind of everything in one place where they've just rolled up everything and put it there. Some people just need labs. CompTIA has fantastic labs, by the way. They're CertMaster labs. I've demonstrated them. In fact, I have a video of me demonstrating some of them on that page. You can just hit the play button and watch the demonstration of that. Their labs are very good. They're very well integrated. And of course, they focus on exactly what you need to know for the SY0601. So labs may be something you want to add to that list. Not only do I have my practice exams, CompTIA also has their CertMaster practice, which are many, many more hours of practice exams. If you like the practice exams on my site and you want to add more of them, CertMaster practice is a good choice there. In fact, if you get the CertMaster practice, I include my practice exams along with this. Or if you already have my practice exams, I can give you a coupon to upgrade to the CertMaster practice for the discount of what you've already paid for the digital version of those practice exams. So there's things we can do with those. So I always say it's never any one thing. You need different things. You need a good book. You need good videos. You need good Q&A. You need good hands-on for all of this to be the best possible learning environment. So I always tell people, do that. Make sure that you go through the process of gathering all the things that you need to study. Some people love to read through books. Some people hate to read through books. I'm not saying you should have to read through a book, but if you like it, it's something helps you study, you should get a good book. If you find yourself books just aren't your thing, maybe use some of these other tools to be able to fill it in. Ultimately, it all comes back to the exam objectives. If you can go through the objectives, use that as a checklist, check off everything, you're good. Doesn't matter how you got to that point. The point is you were able to check off everything. That's the important part. So question, I was doing the 1002 exam at home. It got closed for staring at the screen instead of the camera. How does that work? Aren't you supposed to stare at the screen? Because that's where the exam is? I don't know. How can I get the case number? Well, you call them up and say, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Why would you close it out? Because I was looking at the screen. And get someone else to have a look at that, because they've got the video and audio. They were watching you. They were recording it. They can go back and look to see if what you are saying is actually the case. Now, if you're doing this, yeah, they're gonna absolutely turn that one off. You're looking somewhere else. What's the answer to that one? Well, I think I have it put up on the wall right here. Let me read through that. They're gonna stop the exam right there. But if you're just at the screen, I see this a lot, though, of course. It's why I tell people going to a testing center is many times so much easier than doing this at home. Because at testing center, you literally walk in, you show them your ID, they sit you down, you take the exam, you pass it, you go home. That's it. Your part of the process was relatively easy. Your part of the process was to know the content, sit in the chair, and click the mouse. At home, your part of the process is you clear your desk, you unplug other monitors except the one you're using, you get rid of anything near you that you could write with, you get rid of anything near you that you could see or write on, you get rid of any books, you have to take pictures of the entire place, you have to upload those pictures, you have to make sure the software is working properly and seeing your webcam, that they can hear you properly, and then in the middle of the exam, they could very possibly decide that, you know what, we don't think your eyes are looking in the right place and we're canceling the whole thing and you just failed. Well, that is a little more involved than me just going to a testing center and doing this. Now, I realize not everybody has the option right now of going to a testing center. I'm in Florida. We're open for business. There's no real significant cases that we have to deal with in Florida. So we're doing life as normal here. I'm going to a testing center if I have the choice. But I realize that if you're hours away from a testing center or testing centers aren't available in your area, being at home may be your only choice. And if that's the case, read through the requirements very carefully. Make sure you set up your testing environment specific to what they're asking for. Make sure you recognize that problems can happen. So be ready for an issue to occur. And if it happens, as I mentioned, you've already been expecting it. You already know there's going to be a problem. Don't let it bother you. Don't let the anxiety levels increase. All you have to do is follow their instructions. Should we reboot? Should we try it again? Let's get back in there. What I've found, though, is a number of people that are doing this at home, where they're having to reboot and restart, they're losing time. They're spending 15 minutes trying to get the system back up and running, and then when they start back up again, they've lost 15 minutes off their time, which makes no sense. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. So for those of you that ran into that problem where they canceled you because you were looking at the screen, absolutely call them and say, what are you talking about? I'm looking at the screen. Give me a voucher for a new one. In fact, we're not even going to have an argument about that one. We're not even going to have you reply back with what you think happened. They canceled my exam because I was looking at the screen. This was an obvious mistake. Where should I get my new voucher to do this again? You should just go ahead, as they say, and ask for the sale. It's what they tell you in sales, in the sales training world. You go ahead and tell them what's going to happen next, even though you really don't have control over that. Have a look at your video. As you will clearly see, there wasn't a problem here. I would like to get another voucher so I could take this again, so that we can correct this error. Done. You don't have to be angry or difficult. Just say, clearly this was a mistake. Let's fix it. It's an easy fix. Just give me a voucher. We're good. It's one of those, the testing process itself, a little bit concerning, a little bit of a issue at home, a little bit of an issue. If you go to a place, you have to be ready for almost anything when you run into that. The challenge, of course, kind of makes sense. I understand why they're having these types of problems, because you testing at home is not an environment they know about. How do you make a room in your house have the same secure environment as a testing center? They've done a pretty good job with their processes and procedures. Make you take pictures, clear things off the table. They tell you exactly, you can't use headphones. You can't be looking around the room. People can't be walking in. There can't be other noises. That makes sense. There shouldn't be a way where you would have an advantage over somebody who's in a testing center. But the technology is technology, and it doesn't always work the way we would expect. We can't control for bad cables, for network outages. It's always something, right? So that's where you do have to have some flexibility in the process, or else you're going to run into these scenarios where they just fail you and you didn't even realize you were doing something that would cause them. The real problem, of course, is that now you're delayed. Now there's going to be 48 hours. They have to go back. They have to look at the video. They have to figure out what's going on. So you thought you'd be taking this exam and getting it over with, and in reality, it's now been pushed a couple of more days. Well, that's not really the end of the world, but it's frustrating, and I get it. So that's my perspective of those two things. Find the one that fits for you and use whatever makes the most sense. I think testing center, for me, testing center makes the most sense. For you, may not be. Both are fine. Just find the one that works for you. I think, in fact, I'm going to bring up the exam objectives because somebody else brought up a question about these. And if you haven't seen these, I have had people come to my website and say, I just took this exam and I got a question about something I'd never heard of called NS lookup or something that was very clearly in the exam objectives. And I said, well, that's in the exam objectives, And they said, yeah, well, I didn't read through that because that's just an overview. It's just a summary of what you need to know, right? I said, oh no, it tells you exactly what you need to know. So don't just read through the first couple pages and think, okay, we're done. I got it. You need to keep going. Because, for example, here is the first page of the first section in the first domain. Domain 1.0, Operating Systems. Section 1.1, compare and contrast common operating system types and their purposes. You need to know 32-bit versus 64-bit, including the RAM limitations and software compatibility. You need to understand different workstation operating systems, including Microsoft Windows, Apple Macintosh OS, Linux. You need to know cell phone/tablet operating systems, including Microsoft Windows, Android, iOS, and Chrome OS. You need to understand vendor-specific limitations, including end-of-life and update limitations, and compatibility concerns between operating systems. That is a lot of information for one single section under one domain. So let's go to the second section. Compare and contrast features of Microsoft Windows versions, all those things. Then you really get into it. Summarize general OS installation considerations and upgrade methods. Look at all this. So look at the detail that's in the exam objectives. Take, for example, file system type/formatting. I need to know exFAT, FAT32, NTFS, CDFS, NFS, ext3 and ext4, HFS, and the swap partition. And you need to know the difference between a quick format versus a full format. That's just file system types and formatting. That's a lot to know, but you need to know what each one of those things is for, how it's used, the scenario you would run into this. You need to know that if you run into a system and it says, this is the NTFS file system, you need to know what that is. Or this particular USB key is running exFAT. exFAT? What's exFAT? Is it a FAT that we used to have? Is it an exFAT? No. So you need to know what that is. So that's why I tell people so often, get the exam objectives. They are critical. And use them as a checklist. This is a PDF reader I'm using that allows me to do some annotation. Let's turn on a blue annotation. So as you go through it, you may want to write off, okay, I know that, I know this, I know that, but I need to study these other things. I know what exFAT is. People in the chat room like, exFAT is file system used for flash. I know. I was making a point. But you want to go through this and you could start marking it. Maybe there are things you don't know. Like, I need to know more about FAT32, CDFS, NFS, HFS, and swap partition. So you can go through and start annotating your PDF. If you don't have a good PDF annotator, doesn't sound right. Get a good PDF annotation tool, PDF annotation utility. It does come in handy. Boy, it really helps. I use the annotation extensively when I'm building out these courses. So this is one you would be able to use that's going to help you as well. Whenever you look at this function of being able to study, now you're covered. And if someone asks a question of you that is not in this list, why are they asking? If you find a practice exam that's asking you information that's not in this enormous list, look at all the different command line tools you have to know. If they ask you a command line tool that's not in this list, why are they asking? CompTIA doesn't need you to know it. So this is a good sanity check. It's a good quality assurance check that the other tools you're using to study match what CompTIA tells you you should know. So make sure you know it. Make sure you use it. Make sure it's everything. It really is. It should be the center of your studying universe. It should be the first thing you download and go and read through it before you start studying so that you really get a feel for the scope. And then as you are studying, start checking things off. You read through a chapter in the book, you're like, I got this section on antivirus. Okay, well, let's mark this off as something I know. We're good. That's a great way to study. Then at the end of it, you can go through this list and go, wait, I didn't mark on-path attacks as something I knew. Let's go back and read more about that. That way, if you get hit with an on-path attack question, you're good to go. There's a lot in here, isn't there? It just goes on for pages and pages and pages. What I told people also during the live stream, this came up, is if you keep going through this list, at the very end is a set of acronyms. Now, a lot of these acronyms are pretty spot on. Some of them are not. Here's what I mean by this. So if, for example, ADSL, an asymmetrical digital subscriber line, commonly used for DSL type connectivity for our internet connections, that's the type of line that we would use to be able to connect over our DSL connections. But then you've got other acronyms in here like CGA, Computer Graphics and Applications. CGA is a video standard that we have not used for 30 years, more, 40, 35, a long time. We haven't used CGA in forever. It's not in an A+ book. It's not in any A+ videos you'll find. Not any for the 1001 or even the 900 series or even the 800 series. I would say it's not even in the 700 series. So we're talking about a technology that has not even been in a certification exam for 12 years. Why it is still in a list of acronyms that you're expected to know is beyond me, because you will never run into CGA in any environment. You're just not going to run into it. It's not something you need to know. So I would not necessarily focus on these acronyms as a be-all, end-all, which I think was the point that whoever made that statement in the chat room earlier, I think that was the point they were making, that most of this is good, but some of them not so much. Some of these are off the mark, but most of them are. So let's just quickly go through about 20 of them and let's see, since we're here. Alternating current, yeah, that's good. In fact, let's mark them. We're going to mark them green as good. So alternating current, yep. Access control list, yeah, that's a good one. ACPI, Advanced Configuration Power Interface, that's certainly modern, something you should know. ADF, Automatic Document Feeder, part of the multifunction part of the exam. ADSL, we already said yes. AES is good. The Advanced Host Controller Interface, that's a bit esoteric, but it is a modern acronym, something we should know. AP for access point. Okay, I don't know that we'd use that as the acronym for access point, but okay. APIPA, certainly. APM, Advanced Power Management, you might see that. ARP, certainly you'd run into that. ASR, Automated System Recovery. I don't know if I've really run into that one very much. That one's a little more off the mark. I don't know that it's something that you would find on the exam. I'm going to mark a different color. Let's say Advanced Technology Attachment, ATA. That's another one of those very old technologies that you're probably not going to see on the exam. Same thing for ATA-API, which is just an extension of ATA. ATM, Asynchronous Transfer Mode, another example of an outdated technology you would never see. ATX, same situation, and certainly not part of the 1002. That's a motherboard standard. An acceptable use policy, yeah, that's legit. AV, audio video. Isn't AV antivirus? Okay. I'm putting that one as a purple because I don't know where they were going with that one. A BDR, Blu-ray disc recordable, again, maybe for the 1001, but not the 1002. Same thing for BIOS, not really for the one. So you're starting to see here, not all of these make sense for the exam you happen to be taking. Some of them don't make sense for any exam you happen to be taking. So I would not necessarily rely on this list of acronyms as something you should use for your exam. I would instead scroll back to your exam information here, because in the chat room somebody said CRT is outdated, except it is specifically mentioned in section 4.4, explain common safety procedures. Because what we're running into is we're swapping out all these CRTs from places. They're sitting in a room somewhere now. They're on a pallet. And the question is, now what do we do with these? How do we handle toxic waste handling? Because there's plenty of lead inside of these CRTs, along with other types of toxic waste we have to deal with. So the point with that is, if you find that you've got a pile of these somewhere and you need to get rid of them, how do you properly get rid of them? And so that's why CRT is still in there, because of that. It happens more often than you would think, because we're swapping them out. You take an entire training room, you're putting new machines in, you put in new LCD displays, it's beautiful. And then somebody just kind of throws the CRTs in a back room. And then 10 years later, they come to you and go, we need to get into this back room again. Can you clean that out? Oh, okay. It's got a bunch of CRTs in here. What do I do with this stuff? Well, thankfully, you're A+ certified. You know exactly what to do with it. So go through the exam objectives yourself and have a look at any of the abbreviations or topics associated with it. For example, there's EFS. You know, EFS is right there in the exam objectives. You know that's going to be something you need to know for what does that refer to. We need to know the abbreviation. We need to know how the acronym is applied. We need to know how the technology is in use. Makes sense for EFS. So that's my perspective of the exam objectives. Hopefully that's given you a little bit of a perspective with this as well. I think that if you're someone who's trying to focus your efforts, you're trying to have a methodical way of going through all of these topics, because it can be almost overwhelming, not just for A+, but any certification exam. There's so much in there. So make sure you are comfortable with all of these topics. I find that's easy. I can take a chunk of this at a time. Let's go to the very top. You don't have to grab everything at one time. Just take the first section. 32-bit versus 64-bit, RAM limitations and software compatibility. That is a 10 to 15-minute conversation tops. Maybe not even. But you can learn about why there's 32-bit, why is there 64-bit, what are the differences with RAM, can I run software on both of them, what is the compatibility between them. Now I've learned that, and I'm done. That section I can check off. And then if you have 10 to 15 minutes in time of your day, you've now learned it, you can go do something else. If you have more time, let's go through the next section. Workstation operating systems. Can I get a feel for that? And you'll notice my videos follow the path of the exam objectives for that reason. You can take a little chunk at a time, learn what you need to learn. Maybe you read through this, you watch the video, and you think, I need a lot more detail on this. Let's get some hands-on. Let's read it in a book. And that's why I mentioned you can go to other places and get other types of content that might help you stack onto these. They build on each other. So don't just use one thing and think you're done. I've never, ever said, just watch the videos, that's all you need. Now, I've designed the videos to be a complete summary of every exam objective, but I think if you really want the best chance of passing, you should use as many different and diverse forms of training as you can. It's going to make a big difference when you get into that exam room because you're able to piece all of those things together. Well, we've gone through another hour of this. Hopefully, you've gotten something out of that after show. Thank you for your questions in the after show. I'm glad we had a chance to really go through the exam objectives and talk a little bit about some of the scams that are out there. You just never know what's going to go on. If you enjoyed this study group, we would love it if you hit the thumbs up there on the YouTube video. Not only does that feed my very needy ego, but more importantly, it tells YouTube that you really did like this content and they are more apt to work with me on the things that they are doing. And we've got such a great relationship going with them, and it's thanks to you. Thank you so much for that. Come back next week on Wednesday. We've got a Network Plus study group, all new questions. Every month is all new questions. They're all for very first time, the N10008 study group. So if you're studying for the newer Network Plus exam, we're going to take questions that are specific to that newer exam. So kind of exciting. We'd love to have you here learning about those as well. We appreciate you being here for this one. Thank you for your time in the first hour. Thank you for your time in the after show. Thanks for everything you do when we're not here live as well. I appreciate you stopping into Discord and sending me your messages. It's always nice to read through those as well. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.